So I want to talk about one of the most common bread and butter techniques in karate. That is the lunge punch from here, which is practiced with the hip square and zenkutsudachi. If we just back up here with our knee out and our hip square here from here, back leg locked into place. So there are lots of reasons why you should never do that from here. The funny thing is, the instructors who taught me and all of those guys who do modern Japanese karate, which is often passed off as traditional karate, we'll cover that in some other video, when they sparred, guess what? Whether they were doing a kizamazuki from here, they didn't have their hip square. When they were doing a kizamazuki, they didn't do it like this, from here. They all whipped their hips in with their kizamazuki. If they lunged from here, the exact same thing. They would whip their hips and turn off, and that's because, obviously, turning your hips gives you loads more range. It allows you to whip your hips from here, which gives you more power and speed. Also too, from here, if you finish like this, you're vulnerable to being hit in the groin, and your front knee being out and extended from here is vulnerable to being swept. And also too, if I finish with my hip square, when I want to throw my next punch, how much strength is my back leg lending me to my next punch? How much am I loading it up when I do it like this? However, if I punch like this with my hips off and my back leg slightly bent, I've still got 2/3 of my weight here. I can now push with my back leg. Also too, when I was talking about generating power, I'm using this front leg as well as the back leg. The back leg pushes slightly, but the front leg pulls and delivers that whipping motion into my punch. And that front knee from here pulling, if you are doing your lunge punches with your knee out, guess what? You aren't getting any of that fundamental pulling motion in your technique. And as I said before, this with your front knee in, twisted, this is called footed up stance, by the way. It's far, far stronger, far less vulnerable to being pulled off balance. In fact, footed up is often interpreted as immovable stance in English, with good reason. Your leg's not vulnerable to being swept. It's very, very strong and grounded. It's a great stance. And it gives you the extra range, whip, and power in your punches. So, when we're thinking about lunge punching, why would you ever, if no one ever practices a lunge punch with their hip square in sparring, and that's not just karate sparrers, that's also boxers, MMA fighters, everyone from here, no one practices a lunge punch with their hip square, then why would you do it? And the answer is, the reason why it's passed on that way is simple standardization. It's an oversimplification. We practice our lunge punches like this in haikudachi, in basics with our hip square. We do a reverse punch with our hip square in zenkutsudachi from here. So therefore, all punches in zenkutsudachi must be with a hip square. But mechanically, it's all completely wrong. From here, it doesn't assist what you're doing in the slightest, and in fact makes you weaker and more vulnerable. I've heard loads of other different things and loads of other excuses about why people should have their hip square from here. I've heard them said by people who actually punch like this from here when they're actually sparring. I was told by my instructors, you don't want to overextend from here, but overextension from here implies that you're going to be grappled. Not too many people grapple you on a jab, by the way. From here, it's very, very hard because the jab's a very fast and darting technique. But even if you were grappled, if you're in zenkutsudachi, you can be pulled forwards from here very, very easily. If you're in footudachi, you're grounded. As I said before, footudachi is a much, much, much stronger stance and are much less vulnerable to being grappled. So that makes no sense. I've heard people say it's a setup for a kazushi waza from here. But if it was a setup for kazushi waza, then why practice it thousands upon thousands of times? Does kazushi waza justify that? Is that something you want to drill your beginners in hundreds of times before they even learn kazushi waza? And if it's a kazushi waza, why don't you practice it with the corresponding post twist afterwards? No, from here, you're teaching it as a basic fundamental punch, timing the hands and the feet together, but why not practice it in footudachi rather than Zenkutsudachi. Please explain to me, please comment below on the common sense of it. Please explain to me, give me a reason why you would condition yourself to do that on every level: range, power, speed, preparing your next technique, being vulnerable and being exposed afterwards. From here, it fails on every level. Anyway, as always, think about your karate. Don't just take everything verbatim. From here, test it yourself. From here, try and understand it. And as always, of course, train hard, train smart, and think common sense.